Jeremie Frimpong! What a fantastic name. What a fantastic name. Let's get that out of the way first of all. But it's a name that the Liverpool fans could be singing from the rooftops of Anfield next season, as reports are suggesting that he's on his way to Liverpool for a very fair fee as well, which has got to get the Liverpool fans excited. But I wanted to explore how exactly is he going to replace Trent Alexander Arnold? And before we get into that, make sure you're liking, subscribing and turning on the notification bells to Transfer News Live. And make sure you go and follow us on our other socials as well. Now, Jeremie Frimpong and Trent Alexander Arnold. One is an attacking fullback and the other one is an attacking fullback. So that's that then. Comparison complete. Video done. Like and subscribe. But if only life was that simple, because there are big differences between the two. And we're going to get into why there are differences between the two and why Liverpool may have to adapt to the addition of Jeremie Frimpong, in particular Mo Salah. But let's have a look at what David Ornstein said first of all this morning. In fact, Liverpool advancing in talks to sign Jeremie Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen. Increasing confidence from Dutch international camp. Deal will be struck. 24-year-old right back keen on move, so personal terms are no issue. €35 million clause appeals to Liverpool. Now that's got to appeal to any side really. A player of Jeremie Frimpong's ability at €35 million seems like a steal for me. But let's actually have a look at how Bayer Leverkusen have set up under Xabi Alonso in recent times with this 3-4-2-1 system. You might call it a 3-4-3. It's a common system that sides are setting up with in recent times. But the cornerstones to this side are Grimaldo and Frimpong, because there are some subtle differences here and there, and he tends to tinker and tweak the system a little bit. Does Xabi Alonso with Bayer Leverkusen, but primarily Grimaldo and Frimpong are the cornerstones to this side, getting forward aggressively, getting crosses into the box aggressively and charging themselves into the penalty area, linking up with the likes of Florian Wirtz, Adli or Buendia, whoever it might be who's playing through the middle, and getting themselves crosses and goals as well between the two of them. And they've often been linking up together, one fullback to the other fullback, or one wing back to the other wing back, or one winger to the other winger, whichever you prefer to call it, because there's very little defensive duties for these two players. So it's interesting to see how Frimpong is going to be integrated into this Liverpool side. And now you compare that to the Liverpool side, with Liverpool setting up with this Premier League winning 4-2-3-1 system. Again, similar to Leverkusen, there is going to be differences in the personnel that play. Luis Diaz and Gakpo have often switched sides on occasions, playing through the middle and playing through the left, as well as Diogo Jota's been making his way into this starting 11 quite frequently as well. But primarily we've seen Mo Salah down that right hand side, which is the main talking point I wanted to get into here. And Trent Alexander Arnold, often in the early stages of this season, was linking up with the build-up play, with the back playing out to him, the back turning into a back three, and often him tucking inside and inverting alongside, whether it be Gravenberch or McAllister, into those defensive midfield positions to receive the ball played out from the back, and often inverting himself to get forward and get on the end of Mo Salah's layoffs. And we'll see Trent in this sort of area here, in this particular area where Mo Salah will either lay the ball off to him or Luis Diaz may lay it off to him. You'll see a first-time whipped cross from Trent Alexander Arnold, and that's the difference between Frimpong and Trent Alexander Arnold, or at least one of the differences between the two players, because Frimpong is more of a wide player with an aggressive tendency to charge into the penalty area. If you look at all three players' heat maps here, you can see Jeremie Frimpong, Mo Salah and Trent Alexander Arnold. Frimpong and Mo Salah have very similar heat maps, with the two being quite wide and a tendency to stay in that attacking third on the right side of the pitch, drifting into the penalty area and charging in, whereas Trent Alexander Arnold has that tendency, a lot more defensive duties. There's a lot more of the red on the defensive half of the pitch, which again indicates how little defensive work Frimpong has actually had to do this season, which is going to have to change if he's going to play in that same system that Arne Slot employed with four defenders at the back. I'm going to be curious to see how this actually plays out for Liverpool, because I think then some changes need to happen. Now, if you look at Trent Alexander Arnold, those deep crosses from deep positions where they're not from the byline, he's not gotten into the byline, he's often been laid off very commonly from either Mo Salah or whoever it may be, whipping the ball in from quite a deep position, and he's often getting himself goals as well. Mo Salah against my beloved Manchester City, inverting in midfield, laid off inside from Mo Salah, who's on the outside, and laying it off to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who puts it in the bottom corner. It's been a very different story for Jeremie Frimpong though, because Jeremie Frimpong has a tendency to maintain width. He likes to get chalk on his boots. He likes to stay out wide and get himself into those one-on-one situations where it's him versus the fullback, and he uses his blistering pace to go around them to either get across into the box or even get himself a goal. It's a very different style to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and there's more intricacies into the midfield side of things for Trent, whereas Frimpong is a typical wide player who uses his speed and his athleticism more than anything. Let's have a look at Jeremie Frimpong's goal involvements in the previous 2 years. Now, this is over the big 5 European leagues against defenders. As you can see, there's only one defender, and it's his fellow wingback, Alex Grimaldo, sitting top of the pile with goals and assists, 32 for Grimaldo, but Jeremie Frimpong right on his tail with 26 goal involvements over the course of the previous 2 seasons. Absolutely fantastic from Frimpong. So there's a clear tendency to get forward, be aggressive, get himself goals and get himself assists, where you compare that to Trent, who is down in 16th place with 10 goal difference between Frimpong and Trent Alexander-Arnold. So a lot of Liverpool fans will have been looking at the Frimpong situation and hoping that they still get the same goals and assist output from Jeremie Frimpong, and they are going to get that. They're going to get more than that because over the period of time, he's got 10 more goal involvements than Trent Alexander-Arnold. But now you look at the other differences, the ability to carry the ball. If you look at Jeremie Frimpong's progressive carries over the period of time, he's top of this list, which is an incredible achievement. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is all the way down in 95th place, which I think is a real indication of the difference between these two players and their abilities and their tendencies to drive forward with the ball and play the ball. He's more of a carrier of the football rather than a visionary like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who looks for the pass more often than not. Now, this is further highlighted by Jeremie Frimpong's carries into the penalty area between the same period of time of 2023 to 2025. Again, comparing him to defenders in the big 5 European leagues. Again, top of the list. Again, Jeremie Frimpong, absolutely sensational numbers, because you only need to look at the gap between first and second place of Samuel Lino between the two. There's absolutely monstrous gap between the two and their abilities to carry the ball into the penalty area. Jeremie Frimpong is one of the most lethal, aggressive, dribbling fullbacks in world football. And again, if you compare that to Trent Alexander-Arnold, the similar sort of gap between the two, again, Trent Alexander-Arnold is in 93rd place. Now, the issue for me is doing what he's doing is a very Mo Salah trait, an ability to get into the box, aggressive, one-on-one versus the opposing fullback. That is Mo Salah. Now, you have to think about the conflict of fullback versus winger on the same side. On paper, the idea of Mo Salah and Frimpong is a devastating prospect. But in reality, something has to give. Something has to change, because you can't apply these two players to the exact same positions throughout the pitch, because they will get in each other's way. There will be a conflict of interest between the two of them. One of them will have to invert. You definitely can see Frimpong going around on the overlap, Mo Salah holding up the ball and inverting a little bit and not asking Mo Salah to maintain as much width as he has done in previous years. But asking Frimpong to go around the outside is a new trait for Mo Salah, because he will have to hold the ball up rather than be the carrier of the ball himself and maybe get into the box. But it's a trait that you would not put past Mo Salah, because he's got all the ability in the world, and I'm convinced he'll be able to do it. Whereas asking Frimpong to start crossing the ball, there would be a bigger ask. As you can see, the crossing accuracy difference between Frimpong and Trent Alexander-Arnold, 20% crossing accuracy for Frimpong, and it's 46.8% crossing accuracy for Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is absolutely sensational numbers in terms of delivery into the box. The radar chart itself indicates the difference between the two of them. A real spike in carrying, whereas Trent Alexander-Arnold is very spread out in the progressive passes and defensive actions. Again, can Frimpong defend? Which is a question that often gets levelled at Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, that's more of a question for Frimpong than it was for Trent, because Trent's clearly got the better of the two in terms of defensive actions. And if you look at Jeremie Frimpong's defensive percentile stats, he's actually in the bottom 5% in terms of number of tackles. He's in the bottom 3% in terms of interceptions. And he's in the bottom 1% for clearances. So there are defensive question marks around Jeremie Frimpong's ability to defend. But I have to ask the question, has he even been asked to defend? Because if you remind yourselves of the heat map, he's barely in his own half. He is constantly on the front foot. under the instructions of Xabi Alonso. Now, if he's going to play as a traditional fullback at Liverpool, he has to learn how to defend. Whether he can or whether he can't is a trait we've just not yet seen. Because at Bayer Leverkusen, he's not been asked to do that. He's been sent forward so aggressively. There's been very little defensive duties for Frimpong to actually do. So it's going to be interesting to see how often he's asked to defend. Surely he has to do a bit of defending in this Liverpool side if they play four at the back, with him being the right back. Surely he has to do some defending. And then how is he going to go forward? Because Mo Salah could be in his way. Mo Salah may have to invert a little bit and ask Frimpong to go on the overlap. Or if you're going to start seeing Frimpong cutting inside, it's going to be a new attribute for Frimpong to learn. And I think it's interesting also to consider Conor Bradley as well, because Liverpool fans, get in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts about Conor Bradley's future and the minutes he's now going to get wearing a Liverpool shirt. And does this hinder his growth? Because for me, just going purely off the eye test, he looks a fantastic player. He looked a brilliant addition. And Liverpool didn't look any different when Trent Alexander Arnold left and Conor Bradley came in. There's a real quality fullback there that seems to be getting knocked down the pecking order for the sake of the signature of Jeremie Frimpong. But Liverpool fans, I really want to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you think about the comparison between Frimpong and Trent Alexander Arnold? You're getting two attacking fullbacks, but two very different in style attacking fullbacks. And what about Conor Bradley? What about his future? Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe to Transfer News Live, and I'll see you in the next one.